we're gonna get AI to make our food today. G'day guys, how's it going? Welcome back to Sam's Home Kitchen, where I bring to you budget-friendly recipes with sustainability in mind. As you may know, with the rapid advancement of artificial intelligence, they're not just limiting to self-driving cars or virtual assistants, but it's changing the way how we think about food and how we cook our day-to-day meals as well. Really, in the not too far future, AI is going to be so involved, it's going to help us prepare our food. All we need to do is tell AI what we feel like eating, what we have at home, what is in season, and it will come up with recipes that is going to blow our minds. What's beyond that, we're going to see more and more household appliances come in built-in AI to help with our day-to-day and make our life so much easier. So we're going to take today's video and peek into what it looks like in the future, how AI can pick out the ingredients that we have at home and come up with a recipe that we are going to enjoy. That took me so many takes, but most of the intro that we just went through was purely generated by AI. It just blows my mind how far AI has progressed. It's able to come up with a really intuitive YouTube intro for me to go off. So being the biggest nerd like myself, I've been following so much of technology news, and this thing, ChatGPT, is a new project that OpenAI has just released and open to public testing. It is super interesting that it's able to interpret human language, they call it natural language, without any coding knowledge. You don't need to know how to speak the computer's language. It's able to take our human input and come up with some really amazing stuff. So I thought I want to use the opportunity of this video and interact with AI. So the prompt today is going to sticking to our core, using what we have at home rather than having to go out and buy stuff, see what you can come up with in terms of recipe and see if it's any good. But yeah, make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel, otherwise I'll use AI to find out where you live, where you are, and make you do it there. To be able to come up with prompts to tell AI what we're cooking today, we're having a look into the fridge first. I've got some tomato I got for cheap, some mushroom that is getting a little bit old, and half a zucchini, or what the Brits like to call
courgette.
With this given information, next we'll get in touch with ChatGPT. Since AI is not yet integrated into my fridge to know what exactly is in there, my Bongo Cat keyboard will have to do the talking for me. What's really cool about ChatGPT is that we can use some very natural language to interact with it, and its AI language model does a very good job interpreting. You can see that the prompt that I put in here to tell what I have in the fridge and what else I like to go with it. And then AI returns a list of ingredients and steps to create the dish in an instance. Pretty impressive. Questions like dietary or allergy requirement can also be asked in a very colloquial way. It handles it so easily and gives me a lot of confidence with the recipe. I then ask for measurement conversion to metrics, and then information about serving sizes and then calories, and even information like cost per serving. So this is the recipe I got in the end. If we take a closer look, we can see that some measurements are off where I highlighted. Further to that, I adjusted how I cut the vegetables so I get better texture after roasting. After all, apart from some personal preferences and some minor mistakes, it's a pretty solid recipe. So now, time to cook it all up. We need some polenta as a foundation of the dish, some salt to season. Instead of Parmesan that's mentioned in the recipe, I'm using nutritional yeast to keep it vegan friendly. Obviously some water to cook up our polenta. In terms of vegetables, some tomato, zucchini, and mushrooms that we saw in the fridge. Starting with polenta, we want to grab a medium-sized saucepan. As always, we're working with the scale to get the exact measurement. To serve 2, I divided the recipe by 2 and then added 400 grams of water. Next, measure out 100 grams of polenta. With the water and polenta ready to go, next we move over to the stove and start cooking. Pot on the stove on medium to low heat. Once the water is coming up to boil, gradually stir in our polenta. The recipe says to add the polenta in stages, but since the polenta and water ratio is exactly the same, I don't really see why we can't just add them all in one go. Add a pinch of salt to season, and then about 5 grams of nutritional yeast for some vegan umami boost replacing cheese. Now, give it a good stir until it's all combined. The polenta mixture should be slightly on the dry side, like what you can see here. Instead of spreading the polenta on a white sheet according to the recipe, with our portion, it kind of just makes sense to be using a container instead. I coated the container with some oil so the polenta won't stick later on. Polenta in, Make sure to scrape clean the spatula and spread the polenta out evenly so we get even thickness with our polenta cake later on. Into the fridge with the lid off. 10 to 15 minutes should be sufficient to chill the polenta off. This can totally be done the day before if you're making it bulk for your Christmas lunch. While the polenta is chilling in the fridge, we can utilize the time to prep the rest of our ingredients. I know in the recipe is telling us to cut the veggies in slices, but my instinct just tells me that they will just come out super mushy after being roasted.
Boom, roasted.
So instead, we'll be cutting them into chunks. Take an appropriate amount of zucchini and wrap the rest in beeswax wrap and back into the fridge. Quarter the zucchini and cut into thick slices into the mixing bowl. And then we'll move on to our tomatoes. Instead of slices, I'm doing wedges so they can withstand the heat a lot better. Into the bowl with the zucchini, drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. Give it a good toss to coat it all through. Deviating from the recipe once again, smoked paprika is a nice addition to the flavor profile here. Pinch of salt to season and then toss it again. Now, grab a baking tray or oven-safe pan and chuck in our seasoned vegetables that is ready for roasting. Into a preheated oven on 200 degrees Celsius fan force, I left the veggies towards the top of the heating element to get some nice char. Back to the workbench. We certainly did not forget about the mushrooms. Since they require way less time to cook, I prepped it once the main veggies are in the oven cooking. Cut the mushrooms into wedges to give us a little bit more bite. Chuck them into the mixing bowl to pick up the residual seasoning from earlier. Give the veggies 10 to 15 minutes to get some cooks going before we add in the mushrooms. And then everything back into the oven. While the veggies are finishing off in the oven, put a wire-based pan on medium heat. Drizzle of neutral oil to coat the base of the pan. While the pan is coming up to temperature, we get working on our polenta. At this stage, the polenta should be fairly firm and cool to touch. Flip it out of the container, and then we want to portion it up. In the AI-generated recipe, it's suggested to cut into shapes with a cookie cutter. To minimize unnecessary wastage and offcuts, I think it makes sense to go off the script once again and cut it into triangles.
It's not even a scheme per se, it's...
Divide the square into 4 and then diagonally cut the squares into triangles. Back to the stove. Place our cut up polenta into the now up to temperature pan. Spread them out to get as much heat on the exterior as possible. Flip the polenta cake once we get some nice golden brown color on the outside, and then do the same for the other side. To plate up, stand the triangles up on the plate and we want 3 per plate. And then scatter our roasted veggies over the crispy polenta. To finish it off, extra virgin olive oil and then sprinkle of flaky salt. The cost breakdown goes, 100 grams of polenta at $4.20 a kilo equals to 42 cents. 1 tomato is about 20 cents. 1/3 of zucchini is about 20 cents at the moment. Handful of mushroom is about 50 cents. 5 grams of nutritional yeast at $40 a kilo equals to 20 cents. So altogether, 1 serve of roasted veggies on crispy polenta costed us 76 cents. Alright, and there we have it. This is what we got out of the AI interaction. Going to jump in, have a taste, and we'll talk more about the ChatGPT. Not gonna lie, the combination of the roast vegetables is very good, and this is really just based on what I have in the fridge. If you feel like giving it a try, you can obviously follow this recipe and use whatever roast vegetable that you've got. If you feel like even more adventurous, create an account and use ChatGPT. Leave a comment down below and see what prompts you got, what recipes you got. I'm really keen to hear from you. Just want to talk a little bit more about AI. Obviously, this is brand new. I see so much potential out of this. Definitely see a glimpse of the future where AI is going to take away or replace a lot of the human input that we see now in 2022. All these recipes, the outcome, even though some of the units, some of the measurements might be off, some of the recommendations might be a little bit not so accurate. We are at the stage that AI is giving us 60, if not 80%. It is then up to the human knowledge and experience to be able to fill that 20% gap and make it human consumable, right? At the end of the day, we're not creating information, we're not creating things just to feed AI, to feed computers. The end consumer is still human. That is where I see the world going. AI is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting, not just on food, but talking about like software developments, talking about a lot of the jobs that human are doing at the moment. But then that is kind of going to propel human being moving forward to be able to utilize more of our intelligence, more of our creativity, rather than just doing the boring, repeatable job that a big portion had already been replaced by machines. It's not just the artistic portrait photos that your friends share on Instagram. It's not just an astronaut cat that is floating in the outer space that's generated by DALL-E, but this is getting more real. We have an AI that we can use human language to interact with and get pretty impressive outcome. Hence today's video, it's a little bit different from what we usually do, but the general idea is still the same. You don't need to use AI, but use say like Google search instead. Plug in a few ingredients that you have in the fridge at home. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a really good Christmas. You deserve a very good break. Well, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and I will see you in 2023.